Used to be here, now over there. Time wrong.
Welcome to IE2. Ricardo Acevedo and friends talk about the fleur de lis and local art culture. The Bellrays represent Riverside, as do the Sedans, and the Dangers take their brand of rock to Bradlow stock.
In the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, it was difficult to avoid coming across Steve Horde on the Inland Empire music scene. He seemed to be everywhere. In the early 2000s, Ugly Things magazine editor-publisher Mike Stax struck up a friendship with Horde. Stax was researching the IE music scene of the 1960s for a series of articles in his magazine. When Horde passed away later that decade, Stax wrote the following tribute to him. On October 27, 2008, our good friend Steve Horde passed away of congestive heart failure in Redlands, California. He was 58 years old. Steve left an indelible mark on the Inland Empire music scene and around the world, where his musical legacy has continued to find a small but appreciative audience. Steve's musical adventures began with the Bushmen in 1964, a group that also included his younger brother, David. One of the first gigs was as opening act for the Rolling Stones at the Swing Auditorium in San Bernardino in 1965. The group became hugely popular in the Inland Empire, changing their name to The Bush and releasing 3 singles, 2 of which were big local hits. Feeling Sad and Lonely in late 1965, and Who Killed the Ice Cream Man at the end of 1966. After the Bush broke up in 1967, Steve went on to join The Light, along with former members of the Bush and the North Side Moss. A&M Records released The Light's only single, Music Box Back Up, that summer, and it was another local smash. Despite their enormous potential, The Light went their separate ways at the end of 1967. 40 years later, it gave Ugly Things Records great pride to release Turn On the Light, an anthology CD featuring The Light's unreleased recordings, as well as Got Bush If You Want It, a CD of rare and unreleased music by the Bush. Both CDs received excellent reviews from music critics around the world. Steve and other ex-members of The Light, including his longtime friend Greg Eckler, went on to form White Pepper and eventually Cock Robin. In 1969, Steve flew to England to join Glenn Ross Campbell in the second edition of The Misunderstood, recording more exceptional music for Fontana Records, including Tough Enough and the psychedelic classic Golden Glass. Eventually, Steve returned to California, where he rejoined Cock Robin, but went back to the UK again in 1970, this time to join Joe Jammer. When the Joe Jammer project didn't work out, Steve came back to San Bernardino. During the 1970s, he was the front man for several editions of Cock Robin, playing everything from R&B and funk to hard rock. He relocated to Hawaii for a short while in the late 1970s, where he played with a nightclub band, A Sure Thing, with ex-Light and Cock Robin guitarist Bob Anglin. He was soon back in San Bernardino, though, where he had some local success in the 1980s with the rock group Shag Nasty. Steve kept a low profile in the 1990s and 2000s, but he continued to write songs and would emerge occasionally to jam with friends, usually on a harmonica. While he was most renowned for his natural charisma and soulful, expressive voice, Steve was also a formidable blues harp player. Music was always at the center of his existence, and I believe he sometimes found it hard to make his way in the real world outside of music. Steve was a very private person, but he was always great company. Sweet and sensitive, but with a wicked sense of humor. He will be missed. In August 2009, Steve Hoard was posthumously inducted into the Inland Empire Musicians Hall of Fame at a memorial concert held in his honor. Also inducted that night was Hoard's first band, The Bush. Steve Hoard will be remembered by all who heard his recordings or watched him perform live.
Let me wrap you in my warm, tender love. Let me wrap you in my warm and tender love. 'Cause I've known you a long, long time. Come on, please, till you be mine. Let me wrap you in my warm and tender love. Let me wrap you in my warm and tender
Hi, my name's Iggy. You can call me Iggy. And Chris has asked me to sit in for the studio today to have a conversation with Ricardo, Tom, and Grace DePrini. We're going to talk about the importance of art and music kind of being combined in the Inland Empire. We're evolved out of in my scene, which was the Florida Lee's Cafe, which Ricardo owned back in 91.
91, 92, yeah.
And it was such a mecca for people. I think I was 20 at the time. But the beauty of art that we learned from that place is that everybody has a different medium. And we learned that art can be included from a person making it on an album. It can be done at gigs through performance. But as obvious as that would be to me, I wanted you guys to explain why it's so important for the public in general to have that kind of resource, not just for entertainment, but as an aesthetic value.
What always spoke to me, and this probably helped going and having design classes, and I had some really, I can't even remember the name of the teacher at Valley College, but one of the things we discussed in that class was that everything we have on is art. On your shirt, on my shirt, you know, the way that dress is designed, the way the shirt is put together, that's art. Somebody had a creative sense of essence and had to manifest it. They had, and I guarantee you, it wasn't like, maybe I'll do it. It was like, I got to do this. Creativity, and I always saw it as like, it's a spiral that wants to come out. And if you don't let it out, that spiral gets tighter and tighter and tighter. It becomes like a black hole. If you have a creative idea, if you have a creative sense of self, and you don't act upon it, it will devour you.
I just know the feeling.
Right.
I just started in 5 years ago about it. But
Right.
I took classes when I was in high school and my grade school. But the idea of, it's kind of like you leave somewhere and you miss this thing that you just, it will call to you.
Right.
And if you don't create that, if you don't do it, it'd be like, oh no, why? And then you're hard on yourself.
Right.
Because it's, the time comes and you're totally focused and it's like, it's meant for you to stay there and just sit still and do it.
Right.
And if you don't do it, you just like 3-4 days later or a week later, you'll regret it. And then it gnaws on you. Why did I not do that?
Why did I take care of business?
Yeah, well, yeah.
The good segue for this is because I was introduced to Gary Newhart through you in the Florida Lees. And Gary introduced you to me. And I'm totally surprised that you actually saw the combined art exhibit at the Feldheim Library. These programs aren't necessarily in school anymore. So you're providing a venue, or you're provided a venue to allow people to come and explore art, which there is a reciprocity that begins with that. But Gary Newhart, oh my
Well,
God.
Here, we can take this one step further.
Please.
In 2016, I was here for the death of my father, Ben Barnes, who is one of the most well-established visual and ceramic artists in the history of the Inland Empire. He taught ceramics and painting at Fontana High School. Hundreds of people were influenced by him. Rob Powell, photographer, he took classes with him.
Yeah.
He was a big voice in the art scene. I was in town for that, for his death. And I was down at the library trying to research more things about him. I'm walking into the upstairs library, and what's right there? Her paintings and Gary Newhart's paintings, which brought me all the way back to opening the fleur-de-lis, and one of the first people that walks in the door, I think Gary says, "Are you guys going to have like poetry readings? Are you going to have poetry readings?" And within days, Gary was painting on the walls. And he started telling us stories about hanging out down in Venice Beach with the Doors and the beatniks down there and the whole thing. And he was
Ginsberg,
immediately family. Bring it back again to the fleur-de-lis. What we wanted, Susan, because we got this energy from Gary, we felt immediately that we could start inviting musicians of all kinds to play. to play there.
I certainly didn't bring my paintings along.
You didn't. We had an art
So
gallery.
you do paint too, Tom?
I do, but I really am, it's more of a release, and I'm in a kind of a little area, but they're more traditional, like landscapes and stuff like that. But I try to add, I like the concept of what I call supernatural, where the what you see out in nature, if you really look closely, it's way different.
Because you mentioned the nature aspect, after the fleur-de-lis, some years after, towards the end of the 90s, because I met you in 91, around 99, I got involved with the Department of Ed teaching environmental science. And seeing nature in all its glory, it allowed me as an artist to step back and go, why shouldn't this be included? There's nobody else doing that in this town.
Right.
And it's the IE has that element. If I remember correctly, another thing that came out of the Flux was a gig that happened that incorporated poetry, art, and music called the Flux Fest, and that was done at Eric Schiller's house.
Yes.
In the it was literally in the orange groves.
Right.
And man, that was something.
That was a great show. That was the whole thing. I mean, this happens all over the IE. You get groupings of people who just really want something. And maybe because the Inland Empire is so barren. It's like maybe the Inland Empire is the heart and soul of DUI. When you have nothing, you have to make something for yourself.
You mean DIY or DUI?
DUI. I think both. They're interchangeable here.
They go hand in hand.
DUI.
Like the old Steely Dan song, they'd say, well, the poor people sleeping, all the stars come out at night. Well, the creative people, not necessarily stars.
Kevin Seal with you for the New Music News. Well, the timing could be right for The Conditions. The California punk band have just released their third album, Head, and they've made a video for the song Her Problem. Let's analyze it. Her problem. The Conditions in a video that cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make, and it consumed months of expensive production time.
These strings are gone. so much. We appreciate you. We'll see you next.
The song might be familiar, but I'm not sure.